Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Sorry for the long hiatus, as I said, I had to take a break and help take care of my dad for a few weeks. Thanks for giving me a chance with your continued support. I hope we can continue to grow as a community together. Massive thanks to the authors, Roxi2Star and ThatOneZed for allowing me to adapt their awesome story. Follow the link in the description to check out more of their works. Today we will be listening to the fifth part of What If Deku Had Both One for All and All for One. If you enjoy, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing down below, and don't forget to hit that bell icon so you get notified when videos go live. Now, without further ado, let's get into the video. Chapter 10, Origin. Izuku woke up with a start. He sat up in the bed, his head ringing. Where was he? It was so bright his eyes couldn't adjust to the light. They were hurting like a motherfucker, dry and raw. His finger hurt. Actually, his entire body was sore. He blinked a few times, the room finally coming into focus. He was in a hospital room? Izu. His father's voice came from the door. He looked exhausted. You're up, thank God, he cried. In an instant, Dad was at his side. We should get a nurse. You really scared us, he murmured as he smoothed Izuku's hair back off his face. How do you feel? He blinked a few times, trying to absorb what his father was saying. Finally, he spoke. I think I'm okay. He rubbed the side of his face. Everything is kind of fuzzy. That's okay. I hate to talk about this now, but there's a detective who wants to speak to you, but I told him you'll see him when you're better and ready, so take your time, Izu. Do you want to talk me through what happened, or do you want to just relax for a little while longer? Dad asked, sitting on the edge of the hospital bed. We were at the USJ and villains attacked us, Izuku said, closing his eyes and thinking back. They said they could kill All Might. Oh. He remembered the fire zone. I stole one of their quirks, he said. Sorry, but it was the only way I thought I could survive. Dad shook his head. Don't apologize, he said, cupping his face in his hands. Never say sorry for surviving. What kind of quirk was it? Izuku held up his hand and created a small green shield. I'll have to mess around with it, but it's pretty strong. Fireproof too, he said. I'm sure we'll find a good way to use it. No way we can give it back to the guy I took it from. Izuku paled, remembering what happened after. Oh my god, Izuku-sensei. He's fine, don't worry, Dad said. They weren't sure about his eyesight, but they're pretty sure he's going to make a full recovery. He shook his head frantically, grabbing his father by the wrists. No, Dad. I took his quirk too. I have to give it back. He moved to stand, pushing his way off the bed. Dad stood up. You did what? I had to. The villains, they had this guy. Nomu. He had a shock absorption quirks and a regeneration quirk. He had 2 quirks. 3, I guess, if you count the strength as well. I don't know how they found someone with quirks like that, but there was no way All Might could take him down while those quirks were on the table and Izuku was unconscious, and someone had to do something or they were gonna kill All Might. Wait, Dad, wait, the leader. The one covered in hands, they called him Shigaraki. Dad paled. Are you sure that's what he said? And you said this Nomua person had multiple quirks? Izuku. Normal people don't just have multiple quirks. Most people can't handle having even 2, he said as he ran his hands through his hair. Fuck. He stood, distress clearly written on his face. Izuku is here in the hospital, Izuku. I'll talk to Toshinori. Maybe we can get you in and out before he's awake, he said to him as he walked to the door. Stay here. Do not move, he ordered. With that, he left. Izuku sighed and fell back against the pillow. This was bad. He felt so awful. He had stolen his teacher's quirk. It was a life or death situation, he argued to himself. But was that an excuse? Could that be a reason to just take things from people? Was there a right way to use All for One? He certainly didn't feel guilty for taking shield. Well, he did a little, in the moment. But ultimately, that man was using it for evil. Izuku was going to use it for good. But does that justify taking something that integral from someone? There was also how good taking shield felt, a high like no other. It felt good to take that quirk. Like All for One was rewarding him for using it. But Izuku shook that thought away. He didn't want to think about it at all. Either way though, Izuku was his teacher. It's not like he wasn't going to return it, he just doesn't regret it. He'd undoubtedly saved All Might's life with that quirk by erasing the Nomu's shock absorption. Was All Might okay? He'd been at his limit before he'd even shown up, and he was steaming a lot while Izuku was going toe-to-toe with Shigaraki. That was another thing to consider. Shigaraki. Why did that man share his father's family name? It couldn't be a coincidence. Izuku was starting to think there wasn't any such thing as one anymore. Not to mention the way Dad had reacted when he said the name. He knew something. Or at least, he had a hunch. He shook his head to clear the thoughts away. He glanced at the side table next to the bed. His phone was there, plugged in. Izuku reached over with his good hand and grabbed it. He had a few notifications. Eureka, Ida, Kaken, and an unknown number. He started with Eureka. Hey, please text us when you wake up. No school tomorrow. I hope you're okay. I'm worried, Deku-kun, you didn't look good when Todoroki carried you out. Todoroki had carried him out of the USJ? That's a bit embarrassing. He had a vague memory of talking to Todoroki, but he wasn't sure how much of that was true or not. He shook his head and moved on to the texts from Ida. Midoriya-kun, I sincerely hope you're okay. I heard you had injured yourself fighting against the villains. Please message me back when you are awake so I know that you're okay. I do hope that you'll be in school once classes resume, but if you do need to take a few days to recover, please do not hesitate to tell me. I'll be sure to take extra notes for you. Once again, I hope you're okay, I'm quite worried. Bless Ida. He really was way too sweet and so reliable. He smiled at his phone. He was already thinking ahead if Izuku would need notes. Kaken was next. What the actual fuck was that? Uh-oh. That's right. Kaken, Kirishima, and Todoroki had seen him. Dad was going to be pissed. Don't think you are going to wiggle your way out of explaining what the fuck happened there. You know what the fuck happened, and so do me, shitty hair and half. You're going to tell us what the fuck you were doing. Also fucking text me the second you see this shit. I am not going to lose sleep over you, asshole. He sighed deeply. Not good. Very not good. They'd clearly seen him use the quirk. Azui and Ojiro hadn't actually seen him use erasure. He was sure they'd also have questions, but they could at least be explained away. Finally, the unknown number. This is Todoroki. Fuck. I got your number from Eureka. Midoriya, you did something very odd at the USJ, and I have a few questions about it. Don't worry. I won't say anything about what I saw. Also, please message me when you wake up. You were in bad shape after your fight. Your nose had been bleeding and you had said too many quirks, whatever that means. I don't know much about your situation, but it was quite concerning to see you in that state. You said some odd things to me, suggesting your brain had been rather scrambled. I hope you're okay. A flush crossed over his face. He was concerned. Izuku had said odd things to him? He wasn't demanding answers like Kaken was. Todoroki was almost nice in these messages. He sighed to himself and texted each of them that he was alive and awake and going to be fine. He added a second text to both Todoroki and Kaken, telling them both that he'd talk to them in person after discussing it with his father. A few minutes after he hit send, the door opened again. Dad and Yagi both walked into the room. Both of them looked nervous. Izu, come on. We're going to see Izuwa right now, Dad said. That's currently the most important order of business. He motioned for him to follow. Izuku stood and unhooked himself from the medical equipment, pulling the needle out of his hand with a hiss of pain. Come on, quickly. Izuku followed them down the hospital hallway. Izuwa's room wasn't far. Yagi led the way. He turned the corner and pointed to the correct door. I'll go first, he said, just in case. He opened the door. He squeaked. Yamada Izuwa, you're up. Dad cringed. Hey All Might, you okay? We heard you'd overexerted yourself pretty badly. Present, Mike said. Yagi coughed a bit. I'm quite alright. I was able to defeat the villain without overextending my quirk too badly. He hesitated. Might we come in? He asked. It's myself and the Midoriyas. Izuku has something for Izuwa. Izuku could hear Present Mike hesitate. Now's not a great time. Something is wrong with Shouta. My quirk factor is gone. They found it when they tested my blood. Izuwa sounded awful. Izuku pushed past his dad and Yagi-san into the room. His blood ran cold. Aizawa looked awful. He was like a mummy, wrapped up in the hospital bed. Hey little listener, present mic stood, I know you're worried about your teacher, but I have your quirk, Aizawa interrupted. Aizawa dad cried, stepping into the room. Aizawa held up his hand to quiet him. He turned back to Aizawa. He could see the hint of his eyes between the bandages. I have it. I'm sorry. I took it because All Might needed help, but I can give it back. I'm so sorry, Aizawa-sensei. Aizawa bowed his head. Aizawa sat up in his hospital bed. You took it? He asked. Explain. Aizawa sighed. Here, let me give it back first, he said, and crossed the room. He moved some of the bandages on his face, placing all 5 fingers on Aizawa's skin. He closed his eyes and felt into the void. I've never done this before, but he found erasure, and let it fall away from him back into his teacher. A wave of nausea hit him in full force. It passed quickly, but without erasure he felt a sense of emptiness and loss. There. Can you use your quirk? Aizawa's hair floated around his head, the glow of his eyes behind his bandages. Aizawa felt his quirk vanish. Then the sensation was gone. Thanks, Midoriya. Now start talking. He frowned, pulled at the hem of his hospital shirt, and looked up at Dad and Yagi. Well, it's just my quirk, he started. It's weird. And All Might knows about it. Just like you seem to know about All Might, Aizawa said. I knew you and the Midoriyas were close, but I've known them for years, Yagi said. Aizawa nodded. Yet, so we know all of each other's secrets. I know about his quirk and he knows about mine. Well, it's not a normal quirk. Well, obviously it's not. Well, I call it. He glanced at his father. Dad placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. Give and take. I can steal quirks, hoard them, and give them away. Present Mike gasped. Aizawa's face was covered by all his bandages, so Aizawa had no idea how he felt. Present Mike reached out and touched Aizawa's hand gently. Well, that was interesting. But Aizawa quickly filed that away. I see, he said. Have you used this quirk before? Counting you, 3 times. I took my mother's quirk on her deathbed. It's the one I've been using up until now. Okay, your mother, me, what's the 3rd? Aizawa looked down at his hands. That was also today. I took a quirk from one of the villains. I was pretty sure it was the only way I was going to get out of there alive. He held out his hand and summoned the green shield. It saved my life. His teachers seemed to have a silent conversation before Aizawa turned back to Aizawa. Your classmates have some very impressive quirks. Dad growled. If you're implying. I'm not implying. Your quirk is a liability. You asshole. Aizawa held up his hand. It's okay, Dad, he whispered. Yes. They do, and yes I am, but I hate the quirk I was born with. When I was little, they thought I didn't have one at all. I was bullied pretty badly for it. I got beat up every day after school. No matter how hard I fought back, I was just useless. I couldn't do anything at all. Back then I wanted a quirk so bad. Any quirk, even a small or weak one, would have been better than no quirk at all. His father's grip on his shoulder was tight. Out of the corner of his eye, Aizawa could see his jaw clenched. Aizawa lifted his hand up and laid it over his dad's. He continued. Then when my mother died, I accidentally stole her quirk. But I wasn't happy. I'd go back to being quirkless in a second if I could just see her one more time. He took his father's hand off his shoulder and stood up straight. He looked Aizawa in the eye. I swear that the only time I will ever use this quirk is in a life or death situation. I'm not interested in collecting quirks. I don't want a horde of them. All I want is to be a hero. Present Mike leaned down. His teachers seemed to have another quiet conversation before they pulled away from each other. Okay, Aizawa said. You fought tooth and nail to save your classmates. Yes, you took my quirk, but you came here and gave it back. We'll keep this between us. Aizawa bowed. Thank you, sir. Present Mike smiled at him. Good work, little listener. Now that that's handled, get out. I need rest. Yes, sir. Aizawa and Present Mike took it better than Aizawa thought they would. They were also on board with lying about it, which was a shock. He was touched that his teachers would protect him after knowing him for less than a week. Aizawa and present Mike definitely more than earned his respect. Now Izuku sat in his hospital bed, given the all clear to go home and get back to school. He'd been poked and prodded by the doctors and given a healing quick for his finger. They were just waiting on his discharge papers. He grabbed his phone to let his friends know and then he remembered. "Hey Dad," he said softly. "What's up Izu?" he asked. He was sitting in the chair writing a notebook quietly. Yagi had gone off to help the police with their investigation, leaving Izuku with his father. He rubbed the back of his head. "3 of my classmates saw me use Aizawa-sensei's quirk." The notebook snapped shut. "Who? Have they told anyone?" "Kiken, Kirishima, and Todoroki," he mumbled. Todoroki said he wouldn't say anything. "And I do trust Kiken to stay quiet too. I think he and Kirishima are friendly." "Hold on," he texted Kiken. "Hey, can you ask Kirishima to stay quiet too?" The response was immediate. "Shark mouth isn't gonna say shit, don't worry dipshit. They're all staying quiet," he said, "but they're going to ask. And might get antsy if we don't explain things," he continued. "I mean, they saw me. Azui and Ojiro saw me when I took his quirk, but they didn't see me use it so I could make up something to tell them. But the other 3. Dad gave a long sigh, and began to massage the bridge of his nose. "It's your quirk Izu. Yeah. Do what you think you need to." He sounded so tired. Izuku cringed. How many more messes would he have to help Izuku clean up? Tears formed in his eyes. I'm sorry Dad," he said softly. "I really screwed up." No Izu," his dad said. He stood and walked back to the bed. "No, kiddo," he said softly as he pushed his hair out of his face. "Izuku, you did what you had to do. Who knows what would have happened if you hadn't. I told you, don't you ever apologize for taking a quirk if it saves your life." He pulled Izuku into his chest. "Listen to me. This might be the villain that I came from talking, but if you ever find yourself in a situation where your only options are to do something a hero shouldn't or die, don't die." He leaned back to look up at his dad, still crying. Dad held his face between his hands, leaning in close. He continued, "I'm serious Izuku. Even if it means doing something bad, something that you think might get you in trouble. If it means hurting someone. Please, don't die." His eyes were so focused. Izuku couldn't ever remember seeing his father look like this. Not once. "I hate to do this, but please promise you will do whatever it takes to come home when you're out being a hero." Izuku hesitated. Was that a promise he could make? But the way his father was looking at him. "Okay. Dad, I promise." Izuku watched himself in the mirror. Something had changed deep inside him, but he couldn't put his finger on it. But Izuku felt like he looked older. It hadn't even been a week since his first day of high school, but he felt like months and months had passed. He felt like he'd aged several years. Was this how it was always going to feel when something awful happened? Or would he grow numb? Did it matter? He was on this path, and he wasn't going to stray from it. He was going to be a hero. All Might had given him this power. His father had passed his power on. Izuku was picked, if only by fate, to wield these quirks. He was going to have to do it. Even if it scared him. Who else could? "Izu, are you about ready to head out?" his dad asked, stopping to peer into the bathroom. "Need help with your tie?" Said tie was hanging around his neck. "Please," he said. Dad smiled and approached. "Here, watch," he said. "Around, like this. Now pull this through here." He looked down at Izuku, meeting his eyes. "Did you get that?" I think. Don't worry Izu. I'll tie your tie for as long as you need me to." "What about when I'm grown and married?" he asked. "We won't be living together." Dad smiled. "Lots of girls can tie ties." His next words tumbled out of his mouth without permission. They weren't planned. They were barely thought about before his brain decided to just throw them into the wind, without stopping and examining them, and contemplating what saying them out loud would do. If anything, it felt like after everything that happened, it wasn't even something he needed to be scared of. What if I have a husband? Dad's eyes widened. His mouth opened to say something, but he paused. Izuku can see him considering his words. He can feel the way his father inspects each word he's about to say, and form them together in their best possible formation. Most men can tie their ties, Izuku. I don't think that'll be a problem for any potential future husband of yours. Relief. Instant relief, like a shot of warmth straight through his veins. He almost cried. Almost. Yeah, I guess. Though with my luck whoever I end up with probably won't be able to tie one either, he said. Dad smirked. I dunno. That Todoroki kid seems like the type who can, he teased. He was funny. Didn't know who I was and was very reluctant to hand you over to me. Izuku blushed to Todoroki didn't want to let me go? Really? That's I mean, he whined, covering his face. Let's just go. He ran out of the bathroom, face flushed, his dad's laughter following him. But Izuku was the happiest he'd ever been. They got to school early. Dad placed a hand on his shoulder as they walked to the bench. Izuku told Kiken, Todoroki, and Kirishima to meet him at. You sure you don't want me to stay? Dad asked. He shook his head no. It's my quirk and they're my friends, he said. I told them I would tell them everything. So I'm going to. Okay. If you're sure, do what you need to do. I trust you, Dad said. Good luck. With that, he waved and left Izuku alone. He sat down and waited alone with his thoughts. He pulled out his phone, trying to distract himself, his leg bouncing as he leaned over on his knees. Finally, after what felt like years, he heard footsteps approaching. He looked up to see Todoroki standing in front of him, holding his backpack on one shoulder. Are we waiting for Kirishima and Bakugo? Izuku nodded. Wanna sit? He asked. Todoroki sat on the bench, putting his back on the ground behind his legs. How are you holding up? Izuku asked. We fought villains. Smooth Izuku. That shouldn't have happened to us. Not yet. So. I guess how do you feel? Todoroki hesitated. I don't know how I feel, he said honestly. I'm relieved we're alive. I'm angry they were able to get into the school. He trailed off. I guess I'm scared they'll come back. Me too, Izuku said. I'm very scared. They wanted to kill All Might. They would have done it as well if things had gone any differently. I'm sure we'll have to deal with them again. People like that aren't going to go away on their own. They sat there in silence, the only sound between them was the wind, twirling around them. Oi, Kiken yelled, breaking Izuku out of his thoughts. He and Kirishima approached. I'm waiting. Kirishima pushed past Kiken. Hey Midoriya, I'm glad you're okay, he said but... Yeah. Bakugo's not wrong. You were kind of insane back there. Izuku nods. It's okay. I know you guys are curious. It's well. I lied about my quirk, he said. At this point, there are only a few people who know. My dad, some teachers, and now you guys. He paused, clasping his hands together. I was born with a quirk that I call give and take. I can take a quirk from someone, making them quirkless. I can hold those quirks and use them freely, and I can also give away any quirk I take, he explained. How long? Kiken asked. Probably my whole life, but we only found out when Mom died, he answered. Todoroki nodded. You mentioned you had her quirk. Right, Izuku said, it's her actual quirk. Like I physically took her quirk from her as she died. Kirishima put a gentle hand on his shoulder. Dude, that's... wow. I'm sorry about your mom but wow. What an amazing quirk. He looked up. It doesn't scare you. Not at all. That's so crazy strong. Kirishima smiled at him, his shark teeth showing. It was endearing. Man with a quirk like that, he trailed off, trying to find the words he wanted to say. Well damn, Midoriya, you'll be unstoppable. Kiken smacked Kirishima on the head. It's more complicated than that, dipshit. He can't just go around taking quirks when the mood strikes him. I know. But he can take down villains super easily. Izuku bit the inside of his cheek. Well, I'd have to touch all 5 fingers to their skin. Preferably their face, I think. That feels the best. But I can't just go taking a villain's quirk just because I can. Who am I to decide who gets to keep their quirk and who doesn't? Plus if word got out about it, who knows how many villains would target me. I'm only going to use it as a last resort option. Only when absolutely necessary. He looked up at them, his eyes moving to each of their faces. Please, don't tell anyone. Too many people already know. Those villains might already know. Todoroki moved next to him. For a moment he looked like he was going to reach out and place a comforting hand on Izuku. He stopped, his hand falling back into his lap. Don't worry, Todoroki said softly. We know now. He motioned to the three of them. We won't let them come after you. Todoroki is right, dude. Kirishima said with a grin, we're all training to be heroes too. Hell, the four of us are probably some of the toughest guys in our class. He smiled. We're here for you, man. The entire class is too, even if they don't know what's going on. Kaken punched Izuku in the arm. What he said. His eyes began to well up with tears for the second time that day. Thank you, guys. Homeroom began with Izuku pulling himself into the classroom, looking just as bad as he had at the hospital. He sat stiffly at his desk, peeking through the bandages around his face. Izuku had to admire the man's dedication to his class. He offered him a small smile. He had no idea what sort of look Izuku gave back, if he did at all, if he even saw him. The UA Sports Festival, he said as the class calmed down from his arrival, is in 2 weeks. Is it a good idea to have that right after the break-in? Kaminari asked. Izuku shrugged. The school is insisting on going through with it. They'll be beefing up security considerably. Besides, you don't want to miss your shot. Yeah, the sports festival can make or break your hero career, Izuku said. Pros will be watching to scout us. Midoriya is right, Izuku said, drawing the class's eye back to him. After the sports festival, you'll be doing your first hero internships. You want to make sure you're attracting the right kind of attention from the right pros. Now, in order to help you get there, the school has recently added a new staff member. Midoriya, get in here. The class glanced at Izuku before another person came in the door. His father stood, wearing a simple dark suit and tie. This is Midoriya-san. He'll be helping you push your quirks and making profiles on them. Ashido mumbled, though it was loud enough that Izuku could hear her from across the room. Are we sure that's Midoriya's dad? They don't really look alike. Dad walked to the front of the room. Hello. He offered the class a brilliant, Midoriya-style smile. Oh wait, now I see it. I'm Midoriya Hisashi, he smiled. Your teacher is right. I'm a quirk counselor. Probably the best out there if I do say so myself. My job is to help you analyze your quirks, and help find ways to allow you to make the best use of your quirks. Whether it's through certain kinds of training, diet, or support items, I promise I'll help each and every one of you go plus ultra and excel in the upcoming sports festival. Now. He pulled a fresh notebook from his bag and clicked his pen. His father's smile turned into a confident smirk. Now, who wants to go first? Chapter 11, A Declaration. Chapter by Roxi2Star. I'm Midoriya Hisashi. He smiled. Your teacher is right. I'm a quirk counselor. Probably the best out there if I do say so myself. My job is to help you analyze your quirks, and help find ways to allow you to make the best use of your quirks. Whether it's through certain kinds of training, diet, or support items, I promise I'll help each and every one of you go plus ultra and excel in the upcoming sports festival. Now. He pulled a fresh notebook from his bag, and clicked his pen. His father's smile turned into a confident smirk. Now, who wants to go first? Morning lessons moved to the gym. Izuku stood to the side with Yurika and Ida, his father in front of the group of students. He fidgeted nervously. Dad wasn't used to working with so many people at once. So. We're just gonna do a basic introduction today. Most of the times you see me will be in one-on-one sessions, however, today is all about getting to know each other and giving me a look at your quirks so I can start looking into ways to push them. Dad motioned for them to stand around a large cement circle. Izu, you first, he said, pointing to him. What, but Dad, you know my quirk? Izuku asked as he walked into the front of the circle. Izuku, did you or did you not discover another mutation at the USJ? Dad asked. That caused a ripple of confusion to go through his classmates. Izuku glanced around nervously, his eyes catching Kaken's, then Kirishima's, and finally Todoroki's. They knew the truth of his quirk. They knew about All for One. Well, mostly. They knew about give and take, which was the best cover for All for One that he could give, without going into his father's backstory as a piece of the villain All for One's kindest memories made real. No, they only knew he could steal and give back quirks when all 5 of his fingers made contact with someone. As for the weird mutation his father was talking about. Oh. Right, Izuku said and held up his hand to summon shield. A quirk he'd stolen from that nameless villain. The green energy shield hung in the air as if forming the beginning of a sphere around him. So this is it. It happened while I was fighting some villains in the fire zone, he explained mostly to his classmates. Oh wow, Deku-kun. Yurika cheered. You're just full of surprises. Ah, yet. I guess I am. He turned back to his dad. It's fireproof, he said. Dad nodded. I see. Well, let's see how much it can take before it breaks, shall we? As his father spoke, he untied his tie and tossed aside his suit jacket. Izuku ignored the whistles he heard from behind him. Keep it up, and please don't let me burn you, he said, approaching him in the center of the circle. Can you make it cover the entire front of your body? I can try. Izuku said, holding up both his hands. He closed his eyes, pushing the green energy out further. The shield now covered his front completely. Yet, I can cover my entire body with it. Good, Dad said, keep it like that. He took a deep breath in. Izuku's eyes widened. Oh crap. He tensed up, his body ready for the onslaught. His father exhaled, fire pouring from his lips. It slid off and around the shield with ease. Izuku could feel the heat, but it wasn't burning him at all. Just like it did in the USJ, the shield was keeping him safe. The fire dissipated slowly. His classmates cheered, though for whom he wasn't sure. That's great, kiddo. But I wonder. Let's throw something crazy at it and see how long it can hold up. All quirks are physical abilities, so something is going to make it break eventually, right? Right, Izuku said. So what will we? Katsuki, Dad said, pointing to Kiken. Your quirk is strong. Think you can break Izuku's shield? Kiken grinned, already stepping into the circle. I'll smash it to bits, uncle. Then I'll smash Deku's stupid face in. Dad sighed, massaging the bridge of his nose. Just breaking the shield will be fine. Izuku frowned. Hey Kiken, just break the shield, okay? Don't look at me like that, Kiken, he squealed. Kiken growled and rubbed his hands together before placing both of them flush against the shield. He lit up his quirk. Nothing. Oh fuck this. Kiken screeched. He took several steps away before he turned back to Izuku. Die nerd, he called, propelling himself forward, his explosions now carrying more momentum. He did this 3 times. On the 4th time, a long crack worked its way up the shield. Oh hell yeah. Here we go, he cried and exploded on Izuku again. The shield shattered, and pain erupted up and down his arms. The shock of the last blow had doubled back on his body. He fell onto his back, hissing in pain. Izu, his father cried and was at his side in seconds. Kiddo, are you alright? Arms hurt, he said, glancing down. They mainly looked okay, but he was sure he had felt them crack in a few places that definitely shouldn't crack. Think I broke something? I'm okay though. Doesn't hurt that badly, don't worry, Dad. Dad helped him onto his feet. If you're sure. Someone should walk you to Recovery Girl's office though. His father scanned the room looking for someone to help. Izuku saw a smirk pass on his face for a brief moment before he spoke words that made Izuku nearly punch him. Todoroki, wasn't it? Can you walk Izuku to Recovery Girl? He asked. Todoroki blinked, pointing to himself with a raised eyebrow. Dad nodded. Sure. He walked to the door of the gym and waited for Izuku. Izuku gave his father a quick glare before meeting Todoroki at the door. Do you need help walking, or? It's fine. It's just my arms, he said quietly. Let's go. He pushed past him out of the gym, his arms hanging by his side loosely. This sucks. Another quirk that breaks my bones, he sighed deeply. Todoroki hummed quietly beside him. Is that what that shield is then? A new quirk? Yeah. Dad and I are playing it off like it's an extension of push and pull, he said. Man, there were so many lies to keep straight. Push and pull was even a lie. It was their explanation for one for all, a quirk that was completely different from pull. God, Izuku's life was held together by duct tape and hot glue at this point. But I took it from a villain. It saved my life. I see, he said simply. Izuku glanced at him out of the corner of his eye. Todoroki wasn't looking at him. He had his eyes trained forward, the light of the hall windows cascading off him nicely. It was unfair how pretty of a person Todoroki was. His hair just looked so soft. If Izuku wasn't sure both of his arms were broken and in too much pain to move, he'd have had to fight off the urge to touch it. He was standing to the right of Todoroki, so he currently had the pleasure of admiring his more angelic side. Not that Izuku didn't find both halves of him equally as attractive. The left was angrier and a bit sexy. Right was soft, and well, angelic. The soft-looking white hair, the deep grey eye that bore into you. It was the side that seemed to hold sorrow and softness. It had this sort of ethereal beauty that Izuku could get lost in for hours. But that's just kind of how looking at any part of Todoroki was. He'd seen the smallest peek into his softer side, and Izuku was going to get more. Even if he had to knock down every wall the Ice Prince had up in front of his heart. They were going to be friends, damn it. Plus, if they were friends, Izuku could look at him more. Something on my face? Todoroki asked, that grey eye watching him now. No, sorry. He looked forward, a flush crawling up his neck. He could still feel Todoroki watching him. He hazarded a glance at him. Yab. Todoroki was still looking at him. Something on my face, he teased. Yes. Freckles, he said, then turned to look forward. I was counting them. You have a lot of them. I lost track. He flushed deeper. Was that flirting? Or was this him just being a sheltered rich kid? He choked on his words. I have them everywhere, he said, from being in the sun. They're all over my arms and back. So you'll only one way to find out if this was flirting. Flirt back. You'd have to see me shirtless to count all of them. Silence. Ruh-roh raggy. Suddenly he was pinned to the wall. Todoroki had him trapped, 2 hands on either side of his face against the wall. He stared down at him with such intensity that Izuku felt his stomach flip. This felt like something out of a manga. How many quirks do you have right now? He asked. What? Does give and take count as one, or is it like the bag all my quirks are stored in? I'm gonna say it counts, then push and pull and then shield. So, 3. 4 was the true answer, but 1 for all was a secret. Are you sure? Don't lie. I'm not. Izuku said. Oh god, oh fuck, did he know? How did he know? Don't panic. Just those quirks. If I find out it's some secret 4th quirk that's making my body do these things, I'm going to kill you, Todoroki said, but since you've been honest with me so far, I'm inclined to believe you on this. Sorry, he pulled back. Let's get you to recovery, girl, you must be in pain. He grabbed Izuku by the shoulder gently and pushed him down the hall. Stupid boy, recovery girl said, kissing both of his arms. You're lucky these were hairline fractures. She sighed and shook her head. Honestly, you're just as bad as All Might. If I didn't know your father, I'd say you were his son. She turned to Todoroki. Thank you for bringing him here. Izuku nodded sleepily, laying back. Well, he cut himself off with a yawn. We had to test my new shield, he finished with a shrug. I don't want to hear it, she said. What about you? Any more problems with your sickness? Izuku sat up. You're sick. Actually, Todoroki started. He's not sick. He's just being a stupid teenager. Much like you are. Rest up. Todoroki, go back to class. Midoriya, take it easy, then you can go to lunch, she ordered, pointing Todoroki out of the office. Go, you're fine. Clearly, he disagreed. Fine. But I'm going to get to the bottom of what's happening and I will rub your face in it, he told her and stomped out of the nurse's office. Are you sure he's okay? If he's sick then? Recovery girl laughed. I suppose, in a way, he's sick. But he's going to be fine. Nothing I can do for that type of sickness. She smirked. Don't worry about him, I have a feeling you'll figure out what his problem is by. She stopped. Let's see, you're pretty clever but he's very thick so. Might take you a few weeks to figure it out. Izuku was too tired to think about her words more deeply than that. He shrugged before laying back in bed. He was out in seconds. A few hours and a decent nap later found Izuku waiting outside of the gym changing areas for Eureka and Ida. He was already back in his school uniform, his tie hanging untied around his neck. He'd sent a text to Dad explaining he'd just gotten a few hairline fractures, but he was all fixed up now after a kiss and a power nap. Eureka was out of the changing rooms first. "Hey, Deku-kun," she said, "your arms okay?" He held them up for her inspection. "Just fine," he said, "I think I'm getting used to the feeling of my own bones snapping. Soon enough I'll be able to fight while my arms are flopping around, you know." She laughed, smacking his arm. "Gross." She rolled her eyes. "Oh. We got so wrapped up with your dad showing up. He's so cool, by the way. He gave me some great ideas for my hero costume. Thrusters so I can move around in zero gravity. Ugh, back to what I'm trying to say. Sports festival." "Hell yeah, sports festival," Izuku cheered. "Please watch your language, Midoriya-kun. At least say heck yes, sports festival," Ida said, coming from the men's changing room, adjusting his glasses. He laughed, "Sure Ida-kun." The three of them set off for lunch together. "So Ida-kun, you wanna be a hero because of your brother, right?" "Yes. I'm following in his footsteps," Ida said proudly. "What about you, Midoriya-kun?" "And I'm trying to be a hero because of All Might. Another hero people can rely on no matter what and not worry about." He turned to Eureka, who looked like she was trying to stay out of the conversation. "Why do you want to be a hero, Eureka-san?" She squeaked and blushed. "Oh well, it sounds so lame in comparison to you two," she said, pushing her fingertips together, "but, well, I want to be a hero for the money." Izuku blinked, stopping in place. "What, really? I think that's a perfectly fine reason, Eureka-san," Ida said. "Wanting to support yourself is more than enough reason to do anything, really. I mean, I guess it's more than that. My parents have a construction company, but it's been doing badly lately." She trailed off. "I told them I would work for them, and use my quirk to help so they could sell off some of the machinery, but they didn't want that for me. So I decided I was going to become a wealthy hero so I could provide for them." Izuku smiled and threw an arm around her shoulders, pulling her close as Ida started clapping. "Bravo! That's a wonderful reason. Taking care of your family, I can't think of anything more noble, more selfless than that." Eureka went beet red down her neck. "Probably from all the praise." He smiled at her. Eureka was so cute. If he could find the courage to ask her out, he would. Then again, he had faced villains and won, so maybe it wouldn't be all that bad. "You guys are so nice," she said as she threw one arm around Izuku's waist and grabbed Ida's elbow with her other. "Thanks. Young Izuku." All Might's grand voice came from around the bend of the hall. He poked his head around the corner, holding up a homemade bento wrapped in an All Might branded handkerchief. "Will you eat lunch with me?" he asked and batted his eyelashes. Izuku and Eureka both erupted into laughter. "He sounds like a schoolgirl," she cried. "Yeah, sure," Izuku said, untangling himself from Eureka. "I'll see you guys for afternoon classes." He waved to them as they kept going towards the lunchroom. "What's up, Yagi-san?" he asked quietly, following All Might to his office. Once inside, he deflated. "I just had a few things I wanted to talk about with you," he said. "Sit, I'll pour you tea." Izuku sat across from Yagi. "Things were so hectic when you woke up in the hospital, I never got a chance to thank you," he said. "Had it not been for you, I do not know if I would have been able to defeat Nomu. Even if I could have, there'd be no doubt that it would have blown more of one for all out of me. As it stands, I can now only be All Might for 2 hours a day." Izuku gasped. "He lost an entire hour? Oh, Yagi-san. I'm so sorry." Yagi laughed. "No need to apologize. Man, we act so alike sometimes." "No kid, I just said you saved me. Again, I might add. Now listen, I mostly called you in here to talk about you." There was a knock at the door. "It's me, Tosh," his father's voice called. "Come in, Izuku is with me," he said. Dad opened the door. "Hey, kiddo. I got your text. Arms are all better?" he asked and stood above him. Without saying a word, he tied the tie that Izuku had lazily just slung around his neck. "I'm fit as a fiddle," he said before quickly filling a confused Yagi in. "My new shield quirk, when it breaks, backlashes on my body. Broke both my arms, but not as badly as One for All." He turned back to Dad. "How did the rest of the introduction go?" Dad took a seat on the couch next to Yagi, who poured him a cup of tea as well. "Pretty good. I definitely have my work cut out for me. Most of your classmates seem like good kids who want to get better with their quirks. The only snag I ran into was Todoroki." Izuku frowned. "He straight up told me he won't use the fire half of his quirk. Wouldn't say why. I didn't push, he seems like the type to just shut down if pressed." Izuku frowned. "Yeah, I noticed that. During our first hero foundational training, he only used his ice. I was right on top of him at one point and he wouldn't use his fire at all. Even though it probably could have won him the fight. That is concerning. But it is a matter I'd like to put a pin in for later. Definitely something we should look into though," Yagi said. "I asked you here today, Izuku, because I have something I'd like to ask of you." He looked into Izuku's eyes. "You're able to use One for All at a low power level, and between it, pull and now this shield, you can take on most low-level villains. And, as you know, the sports festival is in a fortnight." Izuku nodded. "It is. I'm a bit nervous, but I think I can do well if I keep up with my training." "I agree," Yagi said. "Listen, to be blunt, my time as the symbol of peace is ending. Soon." "Tosh," Dad said softly, "you're still doing great though." He smiled and shook his head. "Those are very kind words, Hisashi, but you and I both know it's true. We're going to have to face the reality of a world without All Might. Izuku. I gave you my power not just to inherit it alone, but because I know you can be to the world what I am someday. You're going to be the next symbol of peace. I know it, and so does your father." Every hair on Izuku's body stood up. He looked at his father, who only nodded. Yagi continued. "Everyone will be looking to the sports festival to see the future of heroics. I want you to use this sports festival to shout out to the world. I want you to stride onto the field and tell them with all your might that I am here. Because you are. You're 15 years old, and already, you're a hero. My hero, so show the rest of the world that same man that I know you are." Yagi knew how to push all his make Izuku cry buttons. He nodded, tears streaming down his face. "I will, All Might. I promise. I'm gonna do everything I can to win and tell everyone they don't need to worry. I'm here. Just don't hurt yourself too badly trying to tell them." Dad laughed. "Now eat, I see you two haven't touched any of this food," he ordered. Izuku smiled softly, whipping his tears away, and began to eat his lunch. Classes finally ended for the day. Izuku packed up his belongings into his backpack and met Ida and Eureka at the front of the room. "So what did All Might want?" she asked him. "Nothing much. Just checking up on me, asking about Dad's introduction. Though my dad came in part of the way through and we just had a nice lunch together," Izuku said. "Man can't believe you're his favorite stud, whoa." Eureka yelled as she opened the door to the hall. A sea of students crowded their door. Once the door was open they pushed in further, craning their necks to get a good look at all of them. Hey, why are you all crowding our door?" Kikin made a tch noise as he walked past Izuku, holding his backpack lazily on one shoulder. "They're checking out the competition. We're the ones who survived actual villains, so they wanna see what makes us tick before the big battle, round face." He glared at the crowd. "But it won't make a fucking difference for any of you, so back the fuck up, extras. And I came all the way here to see what the hero kids are made of," a deep voice said. A tall student with fluffy purple hair and bags under his eyes pushed his way to the front of the door. "Are all heroic department students as big assholes as you are?" the guy asked Kikin. "Man, I'm disillusioned," he deadpanned. "Did you know that most of the kids in Gen Ed failed the hero course practical?" he asked. "And did you know that with the sports festival, if we make a big enough impact, they might transfer us into the hero course? But then of course," he smirked, "they'd have to transfer some of you out to make room." Izuku walked to stand next to Kikin at the door. "That's pretty cool," he said, flashing the purple-haired kid a bright smile. "Though the good news is, our class actually has an open spot. Someone got expelled on day 1, so if you're tough enough to go toe-to-toe with us, maybe you can take the seat behind me." "Behind you? Not good enough for beside." He laughed. "Aw man, no nothing like that," he said, "I mean literally, the guy who got expelled sat behind me so that seat is actually open." He hesitated. "Look hero kid, you're kind of ruining my declaration of war here." He flushed slightly, looking away. "So turn down the sunshine and let me finish." Izuku laughed again, but harder. "Oh man, you're hilarious. I like you. What's your name?" "Shinsu Hitachi," he said. "Shinsu-kun." Izuku let the name roll off his tongue. "I'll give you one better. A declaration of friendship. You make it to the hero course, and we're going to become great friends." An icy cold hand pushed Izuku out of the way. Kiken squawked, cursing loudly as Todoroki squeezed in between himself and Kiken to stand in front of Shinsu. "Our class is full," he growled before he glared at the crowd. "Better move before I make you," he said coolly. The crowd parted as he passed through them. "Wonder what his issue is?" Izuku asked aloud. "Oh wait, my mission." "Come on guys," he said to Uraraka and Ida, "let's catch up to him." "Wait, Todoroki-kun, wanna ride the train together?" "No." Kiken growled. "Stupid fucking icy hot. I was gonna tell the extras to move before I made them, damn it." "I'll kill you," he yelled and pushed past Izuku to do said killing. "Aw man Bakugo, wait up." Kirishima said, "I need help with my math homework. You said I could come over and we'd study." "Baku bro." He pushed past to follow. "Any reason we're trying to get Todoroki-kun to ride the train with us?" Uraraka asked, grabbing onto Izuku's backpack to stay close as they pushed through the crowd. She had a tight hold on Ida's wrist, dragging him with them. Izuku smiled. "Oh yeah. He's going to be our friend. Did I not tell you guys?" "Oh, sick." Uraraka smiled, "I'm down. Let's make Todoroki-kun the 4th Deku squad member." "Hey Shinsu-kun, if you make it to the hero course you're gonna be the 5th member, okay?" she called. "What the fuck man," Shinsu mumbled. "Alright, that's where we'll leave off for the day. Thanks so much for listening along with me today. If you enjoyed, please like and comment down below and check out the video or playlist on the screen for more content from me. I look forward to seeing you next time. Ciao for now, lovelies.